Okay, greetings all. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time. My name is Oli Kwan. I'm responsible for the Gathid business in Asia Pacific, Japan. Today's session, we're talking about how to drive identity governance in the face of economic headwinds. And with me, I have the head of product from Gathid, Alicia Wheatley, and from KPMG Hong Kong, Bagia Pereira. And we appreciate everybody's time today, and we hope you enjoy the session. So just a few words of housekeeping. The session should run for around 45 minutes, possibly a few more minutes. Throughout the session, please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A box. At the end of the session, we will attempt to answer all the questions. But rest assured, we will provide a written response to all the questions after the session today. So without further ado, we will get started. And again, thank you for your time, and feel free to ask questions as we go. Maybe we can move to the first slide if possible. Thank you. So yeah, just to reconfirm, today we're talking about identity governance. So I'm sure all of us are familiar with terms like identity access management, privileged access management. Identity governance is a little more focused, really looking at things around checking user access rights, checking level of access that's possible. So I guess role mining, if you like, segregation of duty, reporting, and analytics. And what we're seeing today is that organizations are more and more often having a very wide range of applications that they are running to operate their business, whatever business they're in, where they will have on-prem applications, they will have cloud applications, they will have legacy applications, custom applications, air-gapped possibly as well. And all of these applications are just getting more and more numerous and more complex, and unfortunately more and more difficult to really have visibility across and understand, okay, who has access to what across all these apps? How far can people get into these apps? How much privilege do they have? And then do they have any dangerous combinations of privilege into one application, like, for example, SAP, or across different applications? Those segregation of duties, toxic role combination concerns. So we're seeing that across the market, there is a very high interest in getting better visibility across the entire tech stack of an organization. And we're going to talk about today some, I guess, best practices, gotchas, and I guess potential ways to drive success, especially in the current economic macro environment where that we are all living in. Next slide, please. And I believe, yes.
Yeah, I'll chip in here. Hi, everyone. Bagia Pereira, KPMG Director in charge of Cybersecurity Transformation Services. So I've been a consultant for close to 20 years. I've delivered cybersecurity services for various clients, Hong Kong, Singapore, in the region. And I've seen a number of successful IAM implementation throughout those years. But I've also seen a fair share of failed projects and projects that failed to deliver the value that they promised initially. Thankfully, not under my watch, but I've seen fair share of such failures. Now, if you look at why IAM project fails, there are a number of reasons. Why identity access governance fails, there are a number of reasons. So on this slide, you see some reasons. If I were to highlight a few things that you probably have experienced yourself or you have seen in the industry, for example, program governance. If you are embarking on an overall IAM solution implementation and subsequent operations, program governance is important. There are various aspects that likely to go wrong. The first and foremost, the tool complexity. The solution may not provide connectors for all integrating with all applications, especially legacy applications. And Most importantly, you get some finite amount of money as the budget approval. You want to do a lot of things, and the management expect you to do a lot of things, but you can't do everything with the kind of money that that was allocated for the project. So most of the time, we promise a lot when we go on IAM implementation, then we under-deliver. That's on the program governance side, overall solution selection side as well. Then when it comes to implementation, designing, access and identity modeling, most of the time is incomplete. Sometimes too many roles, sometimes limited roles, segregation of SODs are not properly defined, various issues throughout a project implementation cycle as well as during the operations. Same thing happens when you operate. Sometimes we all know, right? Access certification is more or less audit exercise. Is nobody take a look at things properly. Can't blame the business users or the IT users because it's a massive exercise, very complicated, and to be done annually, mostly manual processes. Right. So when I heard about gathered identities through Ollie, I realized actually gathered identities fill in gaps that cannot be typically addressed by any other existing IAM solution. And also the gathered identities is useful, very useful for identity governance life cycles throughout project implementation as well as operations. So that's why KPMG decided to partner with gathered identities to help drive identity governance for our clients. I think I covered enough on this slide. If any questions related how we can help, obviously we can have a conversation subsequently as well. Ollie, over to you.
Okay, great. So we excuse me. So at Gathid, we are very happy to partner with the KPMG team, and we are finding across the market that there's definite interest in this space because companies, even those that are very advanced with their identity programs, we are seeing that these individuals, executive sponsors within these organizations and the organizations as a whole typically are just not able to get the level of visibility that they want across their entire tech stack. And this is a challenge, right? Because if you are an executive that's sponsoring these projects and you need to attest at a macro level across all your systems, and effectively it's your reputation on the line when you're seeing that a lot of the work that's being done is perhaps not being done at the level of, should I say, accuracy that is acceptable, for you. It's a challenge, right? And we're really happy to be able to align with someone like KPMG, where we can contact executive level within large organizations and help them understand, okay, where are we at with our identity program? What are the gaps? How can we fill those gaps? And as we'll work through today, the session, we will explain more about how and why we do that, and then our specific program that we've built with KPMG to offer that, I guess, assessment. So thank you. Next slide, please. Great. So really quickly, who are Gathid? So it's pronounced Gathid. And that's a combination of two words, gathered identities, the way that an Aussie would say it. So we are an Australian company. We're listed on the ASX. The founders have around 20 years experience in complex identity projects. And as such, there's I guess a story in terms of how we got to where we are now. Our approach at Gathid is focused around a graph database. So you may be familiar with things like Bloodhound, Alcid, where you're using a graph database to map out misconfigurations on Active Directory to understand, I guess, ways that you could have privilege escalated on AD or potentially ransomware run through the AD. The concept for us is a similar one, using a graph database, but not limited to one software system. we have a patent at Gathid to be able to map identity data from any software system. So it's a very interesting proposition, and we're seeing it being used in different applications in different industries. So we have like operational technology companies, the world's biggest mining companies that have got a wide range of different systems, operational technology systems, building management, physical access, mapping against digital, etc. Then you have your standard finance types of clients. They've got a lot of mainframes, which are pretty difficult to manage when you're looking at things like, for example, user access reviews and role mining and segregation of duty, and then mapping that across digital systems. So it's a really interesting proposition. And our mission as an organization is to help clients understand, okay, what is my identity security posture across all my systems, right? That's the legacy apps, the custom apps, the air-gapped apps, the cloud apps, everything SSO, the entire tech stack, who has access to what, and provide that visibility continuously. Next slide, please. So a bit on the background and experience. So the Gathid founders, this is their second time building a company. So their first company was an identity access management platform running on top of physical access control systems. So I'm sure some of us here have had the challenge of trying to understand and align data from physical access control systems with other software systems like digital systems, operational technology systems. So this is where the Gathid founders came from. So they had a company that was called RightCrowd, and it was an IAM, as I mentioned, running on top of physical access control systems. So you may be familiar with physical access control systems such as Gallagher, Honeywell, Johnson Control. So these systems typically are very disconnected from other software systems that a client are running. So the founders, they had some great success with this company. They managed to integrate it into, for example, 3 of the largest global tech companies in the world, the three amigos out of America, you could say, and these working across their data centers and their fulfillment centers and their offices was challenging because the clients were saying, look, we are running obviously critical technical systems inside our data centers, for example, and you are controlling who has an access card to be able to get in. I mean, how do you know that person actually still is employed, right? If they have been terminated, they shouldn't be able to get into the data center. And then if they can get into the data center, what rooms can they get into? Can they get into the rooms with the OT machines, like the generators and the UPSs? Because if they can't even access those, they don't have login access to the OT machines, why can they even get into those rooms? And if they can get into those rooms and they do have access to those OT machines, like the generators and UPSs, have they actually done the right training in our LMS to operate? Should they be allowed to log in and operate that UPS and generator? So you can imagine these challenges when you've got like completely separate systems, LMS, physical access control, OT systems. I mean, it's very challenging, right, to try to understand who has access to what and who should be able to get into what. So this is where we came from, and we're seeing now, and once this model was built, because the team at Gathid realized that using a graph database was probably the most effective and easiest way to get these completely disconnected systems aligned and get intelligent information out of them. And that was the birth of Gathid. The organization then realized, okay, look, this is a massive total addressable market, because if you go to, say, the Forbes 2000 type of organizations, most of them are going to have some kind of identity program in place consisting of IAM technology, physical access, privileged access management technology. But what we see across these large organizations is it's just very difficult to cover all the systems that they have, because every client's going to have legacy apps. They're going to have air-gapped apps. They're going to have custom apps. And trying to connect these into your traditional IAM or PAM technologies is very expensive, right? Because typically you're going to need, some level of kind of customized integration that is unfortunately very expensive and takes a long time, right? That means that those apps that are disconnected, that don't get integrated into the IAM and PAM, product that the organization is using, they are left disconnected. So things like user access reviews, they are done typically once a year manually in isolation for those disconnected apps. Things like role mining. So I'm making sure, okay, in my apps that are disconnected, the people that have access, who has got more access than they should have for their job role. I mean, that obviously is done manually and in isolation, perhaps once a year, and then things like segregation of duty. Okay, if somebody has access into this app, if they can do, say, two things and combined, that is dangerous. That's a segregation of duty issue. Or they may have perhaps access into two different systems. But again, if we're talking about disconnected systems, they are not integrated into the IAM. So they don't have the benefit of that kind of automatic continuous segregation of duty analysis. So it needs to be done manually in isolation. So for a CISO CIO that needs to attest and sign off once a year, this is obviously a concern because that manual work, how can you be sure it's being done correctly, in depth, accurately every time? Well, unfortunately, it's impossible to do so. So we're seeing that there is a need to connect those disconnected. So how we are doing it and our approach is a little bit different. So it's lightweight, low risk, and fast time to value. And the key reason being, we are using an approach where it's read only, right? So we are not requiring bi-directional read-write access to the systems that we are providing supervision over, right? So we have an approach where the data is being pushed from our clients to our graph database. It's typically being pushed on a daily basis, and it's using a very generic connector structure, right? And that generic connector structure means that it's very quick for us to connect and also create connectors, right? We're talking days to be able to get a connector built, get data from the client system into our platform, and then analyze, typically a week or 2 weeks. And when we speak to our clients that perhaps are working with the very large IAM PAM platforms where they do require that bi-directional integration, they are saying it can take them 6 to 12 months to get the systems installed and the visibility that they need, right? So our approach is we want to get the visibility very quickly. We want to be very low risk, so read only. And we want to provide that continuous visibility. So there's daily analysis of the system data that we're ingesting, and then pushing what we detect in terms of any kind of violation of what is acceptable. So for example, if somebody is terminated in HR but still has access into SAP, well, maybe we want to remove that account, right? If they are employed and they have access to SAP, but for example, their job role says junior finance person, and they have the level of access that you would expect the CFO to have, perhaps we want to change that, right? That's continuous role mining. And then in SAP, if they have the ability to, for example, approve payments and also make payments, that's a segregation of duty analysis. So we can offer that in a continuous fashion, read only, detect the violation, and push the instruction back into, not directly into the system, SAP itself, but into the ticketing system to advise, hey, ServiceNow or Jira, can you please remove this person's access because they've left, or reduce their access because their job role says they shouldn't have that much, or change the segregation of duty analysis. So in terms of getting to this level of, I guess, automation and continuous visibility, we have a structured approach that we work through. So typically with our clients, they are normally going to have a number of HR systems, and in terms of like the core identity systems, on-prem AD, Azure AD, and or Okta, right? So typically clients will start with looking at those core identity systems and their HR to make sure that they clean that data, get a true identity reality baseline upon which they can build the models for those apps that are disconnected and they want to look at continuously, right? So in terms of HR systems, most clients that we work with are going to have more than one. It's very common to hear people saying, I've got one HR for my full-time employees, I've got another system for my contractors, maybe others because we've acquired companies or merged. So we can see SuccessFactors, Chris21, Workday, and others, right? So typically we start with these, push them into our platform, and we can create a virtual single view of all HR systems. And then we can map that against their AD systems, for example. And it's common for clients to say, hey, with AD, I've got multiple physical instances, right? So we can then also create a virtual single on-prem AD instance in our system and map that against their virtual HR instance continually. So every day we can tell them, okay, give me a list of everybody who's listed as terminated, but still has an active AD account, still has an active Azure AD account, and so on, right? So once we clean up that level, we can move to step 2, which is mapping in the core business apps that they want to work with. So they may be SAP, maybe mainframe apps. For a mining company, maybe it's OT, building management, physical access, whatever it is. Step 2 is pushing those in, and we go through the same process. Clean those apps up. So who is in HR but still has access? Who has got more access than they should have into, for example, the SAP than they should have for their job role? And who has got segregation of duty analysis and issues, risk issues, right? So that's the second step. And then once we've cleaned that up, we've got a baseline as to what is acceptable in terms of identity risk across those core apps. We can then move into step 3, which is just production. So daily push of the data into our platform and continuous user access review on those apps, continuous role mining on those apps, continuous segregation of duty analysis on those apps. And the beauty of this is we can get this up and running in weeks because we don't require the bi-directional integration. All we need is a one-way push, single direction, and then we can get that in and fine-tune typically in a week or two. Okay, next slide, please.
If you don't mind, Ollie, I might just jump in there and just call out that these steps do not have to be linear. They can actually happen in parallel. So for a lot of clients, for example, they might be at a maturity level of having a number of systems already defined within their roles. We can even start there and then add in the disconnected systems. So the steps can be moved through in a non-linear manner, and you can start wherever you're up to. The way that the graph works is it rebuilds each day. So essentially it's a new day every day. So we can begin at any end and continue through those steps for each of the applications or the assets that you're wanting to track. Sorry to jump in there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next slide. Thank you. Awesome. So as Beya mentioned before, it's common for us to be helping, I guess, complement and optimize existing IAM and PAM programs. So we are there to help our clients get more value out of these existing programs. And if they don't have a program already, we can help them get ready to move to these kind of larger, more transformational IAM and PAM platforms. So we are helping gain full coverage. It's common for a client to say, look, I just don't have the level of visibility I need, right? It's very common for clients to say, hey, I've already got a platform in my IAM and I've also got a PAM, but I've only got 50% of my apps integrated. I need to have those other 50% looked at in something better than just like once a year manually. We can help also validate what is the existing PAM and IAM doing. I mean, we hope, and we are sure that most of the time, 99.9% of the time, the IAM and the PAM is doing the right job, right? But how do we know every single time a new person is added, they're not given too much access for their job from the connected and disconnected systems? How do you know every time somebody leaves that they are removed correctly and all access is removed from every the connected and disconnected system? And then what happens if somebody changes job role? How do we know that all their old access for their old job role has been removed? So just to double check that, have a second set of eyes is really important for our clients. And we've got a lot of clients that are very interested in developing kind of role matrices, segregation of duty, I guess, analysis rule sets, if you like, to look at their core business apps, those apps that are most important, to make sure, look, I need to ensure that anybody who's got access is still employed, they don't have more access than they should for their job, and they don't have dangerous combinations. So we can help either develop that, or we can implement very quickly what they already have developed. So we have clients, for example, banks that may already have a very well-developed role matrix. They can import that and effectively in the next day start to enforce it using our platform. Any comments from anybody, or should I move on? Okay, great. Cool. So in terms of cybersecurity, we have also use cases there where clients are looking at apps that were traditionally disconnected. So when they did their analysis, it was done in isolation once a year. And there wasn't any kind of combination of mapping that that disconnected application against other disconnected apps or connected apps. So by mapping them, pushing it into the graph, and then mapping them, you can effectively daily, if you can push the data in, you can look at attack pathways, how an attacker could move through these completely different disconnected apps and potentially get to an end goal, or maybe there are toxic role combinations between these different apps. And for our clients, they also can be using it as an incident response resource, because it's possible to actually save a snapshot of what's being pushed in daily. So what we're taking really from our clients through those single direction read-only connectors is a list of the usernames and level of access, perhaps last login, and whatever data the client chooses to push to us. but you can snapshot that. So then you have a record every day of who had access to what for the most important apps that beforehand you were just looking at once a year. That allows you, if you do have an incident, you can say, okay, I want to analyze what was the delta before the incident, during the incident, and after the incident in terms of who had access to what. Perhaps there was, privileged access chains that were implemented by an attacker and so on. Next slide, please. So I think now I'll hand back to Alicia. So thank you, Alicia.
Thank you, Ollie. Yes, so we do, as mentioned, complement existing processes. So just a little bit about me. My background as I've come from a number of decades now, working with different projects, doing this manually, helping clients to define their roles and implement their identity and access management solutions and/or GRC programs. And when I came across this product, I got very excited because there's a lot of macro and micro visibility that we currently lack in a lot of our solutions today. So Gathid really focuses on complementing your existing processes and infrastructure wherever possible. So when we're talking about, before we're doing a major identity transformation project, Gathid is fantastic in helping you to unlock or uncover that visibility from the various systems that you're wanting to connect together. So typically in those more the implementations that are implementing automation, we see a long process for building those connectors, and that is because they're bidirectional. They're setting up a connection between that account and removing and provisioning access within that system. With Gathid, we're simply receiving read-only extracts from those systems, so we can very quickly see who has access to what, and then use your existing processes to remove that access even the next day. We've heard feedback from our clients that they see in days what would have taken 9 to 12 months to achieve with their full implementation of an identity and access management solution, for example. So it really is about giving better visibility. Our CIOs and our CISOs are really keen on what kind of reports they can see ahead of completing the very larger project. So that really helps to identify and cleanse that dirty data and understanding those processes before they begin to be automated. We don't want to automate dirty data throughout our organizations. We want to instead identify, validate, and cleanse ahead of the full automation piece. During the implementation. So this is where, as Ollie just described, every day we're receiving insights into who has access to what. So you're now deploying a system, and every day Gathid will go and recollect who has access to those applications, what changes have happened overnight. You can even send those changes through to the people that need to see them most. So it really helps to demonstrate the successes that you're having as you're moving through these systems and as you're deploying your identity and access management solution or your privileged access management program, really helping with identity security to give that visibility and keep track of where things are up to every day. And then after, so once you're implemented, there's always going to be those systems that aren't connected. They're not online, they're on-premise, or they're disconnected. They might be non-systems. They might be physical keys that people are, gaining access to your assets through. They might be devices or assets that connect to an identity and are important as part of that identity footprint or the access that your people hold within your organization. So Gathid continues to provide visibility not only to the successes that you have within your automated systems now, but also connecting those disconnected attributes into your identity ecosystem. It allows you to bring those homegrown applications. It allows you to gain visibility of shadow IT, systems that aren't typically integrated within your regular ecosystem are now able to be brought in through Gathid. It also enables your continuous user access reviews. So by getting daily feeds from those connected systems as well as the disconnected systems and looking for the deltas, trying to find the outliers every day means that you're able to do your audits before your actual audit. So you can see ahead of time who are the outliers. Let's take control of those before we complete our full annual or quarterly user access review. So then I might actually jump into some product screens, but before I do, does anybody have anything, I don't know, Ollie or Bagya, did you have anything to add on those 3 stages? So before, during, and after an identity transformation project, anything that I might have missed there?
I think it was a good summary.
Good, yeah.
Cool. we'll jump on in if you have questions. So just to give a little product insight here, so what it looks like, because it's always a common question. We have obviously a very nice visual graph here. This particular image is showing an identity focus or people focused view of the graph. We have a person in the center, and we can see each of the entities, as we call them, that are connected to that person. So we can see information like their access within Azure or Entra. So we can see which groups they're a part of. We can see what training they may or may not have completed. And if we have rules in place that say, in order to gain access to this privileged group, they must have completed this particular training, Gathid will every day check that both of those attributes are in place and notify the appropriate personnel to either remove the access or ensure the training is completed, as an example. But the way the graph works and our patented technology has been defined is that if you can traverse the graph, then you can track rules about it. So you can write policies across anything within your organization that might relate to that identity. So, it means that, like a simple, from day one, when we load a new system, we're always looking for, show me all the people in the people system. So it might be one or multiple HR systems, or it might be one or multiple identity or account management systems like Active Directory, Azure, Okta, so forth. You might be running multiple of any of those. We can find from that collective identity source whether that account is still active or that person is still employed, and whether they still have, so if they're terminated, do they still have active access to anything? And we can do that every day just from those read-only extracts. So that's first day, drop the new system in, immediately see who has access that they shouldn't. And then you can start to get more granular. Who hasn't accessed the asset or the account in 90 days? Who doesn't connect to HR? Who are our external users that don't connect to HR and they don't connect to our contractor management system? And be able to prioritize that data cleansing, that cleanup right from day one. So the way that we receive files is very open. We've done this intentionally. We want to continue to make it very flexible for your teams. So even dropping a CSV file through our upload portal, very quick and simple, SFTP or through API read-only connectors, that means that we receive that information in manageable ways that you're probably already doing. You're probably collecting that information already. So we try and help you to establish and work with our partners such as KPMG to help establish those daily feeds, getting those insights regularly. And then the graph itself, as I mentioned before, rebuilds automatically every day. And when it does that, it then goes and looks for all those outliers again, automatically every day. And by doing so, by being able to create a consolidated view of an identity and their access, it means that we can then start tracking segregation of duties or toxic role combinations across one or multiple applications. So you can start to see, here's one account over here and here's another account. And maybe this is a user account that has admin access, but they also might have like this super VIP access over here. So being able to track where there might be conflicts between the two systems or between the different accounts or access they hold is very helpful. Because it's dynamic, it also allows you to grow. It grows with your application. So it'll automatically update as you change position titles in HR or as you move your org around and you're reorging your structure. So it'll dynamically update with your organization. Of course, because we're receiving that information about, I'm going to go back and come back. So we're receiving information about this person from HR in this particular case. We can see they're a part of the corporate services department. We can see that they have this payroll administrator role. So they've defined a business role as payroll administrator. They're allowed this access. I can double click on that graph and now see the view from that roles perspective. I immediately have visibility. Who else is a payroll administrator or an accounts payable in this case to this organization? I can see who they are. I see some very interesting information that Mimi here has actually left the organization. So that's very helpful right from the get-go. But I can also see the systems and assets that a typical accounts payable person in this case has access to. So very helpful, again, right from the start to start identifying those roles much quicker than us humans can do. So great to leverage modern technology to achieve that. So we can create that sort of trifecta of what are my position titles? What are my business roles that I'm approving? I create a baseline and say, this is what each role within my organization is allowed to have. And then every day I'm tracking it against their actual access. So I can see every day where the deltas are, who I need to remove access from, or check if there's an exception in place, and or do I need to update my expected roles? Very quick with Gathid. So then obviously looking at graphs is really fun, but not something that gives us those quick answers. So we have these helpful dashboards for you and for our CIOs and CISOs to be able to build and monitor and maintain for themselves and or for their teams, and of course for the business. So these dashboards can be easily configured. You can see the first item here is action required. There are people with excessive access that are different to their role. So these, you could click through and actually see who those 25 people are. That could be automatically sent through to our service desk and or to the system owner and or to whoever else needs to receive that throughout the organization, interfacing into an existing process. And I guess, as I mentioned, this also could be linked through to an API. So if you have other products like a Power BI or a reporting solution, or you might have some automation in place to be able to take action against those results, also possible with Gathid. Yeah, so moving through to the last piece here of the product slides. Now, one key part that we've identified with identity governance is that there's always going to be a user access review. And currently in a lot of places where we're dependent on Excel spreadsheets sent throughout our organization. The real goal here was to create an interface for our business users that they can come to a single place and see their whole team, the systems that they have access to, and the level of access within each of those systems, that they have one place to come each quarter or year annually as they need, and they have everything that they need to make a good decision in that view. So they know that they're still employed, they know what position title they hold, they can sort on those columns and address access reviews either by system or by position title perhaps, helping our business personnel to make better decisions about their teams. And then vice versa for our system owners, our teams that are people that are out, not necessarily interacting with these people with this access or these accounts, not really knowing who they are or what they're doing, now can have that context as part of their review. So you could, instead of seeing it by manager, you could now see it by the system owner, and they can see who the people are that are connecting to those accounts and make better decisions about whether that access should continue or not. The beauty of the graph is that you're able to slice and dice your identity information by any of the properties that you're collecting. So a lot of our teams will start with slicing it by even department head, like being able to see who is the department head of this team and what access do those people hold, or by high-risk access, being able to filter by that. So the graph creates a lot of flexibility and allows you to very quickly go from a macro level of what access people hold down into that micro outliers, trying to find who are the accounts that have access that shouldn't, and then running that same report every day. So back to you, Bagya.
Thank you, Alicia. So as both Oli and Alicia mentioned, identity access management is a complex, challenging process. Gathid obviously is helping to smoothen that process and get better benefits from your existing IAM solutions. If you are embarking on a new transformation journey, the solution is Gathid is very helpful for you to justify investments in IAM. And if you have, let's assume you have a fully functioning IAM solution platform within your organization, but chances are that there are gaps, right? Based on my experience in any large organization, identity management is a challenge. And in any large organization, there are systems that are not actually integrated with the mainstream IAM solution. Depending on where you are in the IAM journey in your organization and what outcomes you would like to achieve from, let's say, if we were to run a 5-day or 3-day health check program for you, right? We can define the certain scope of work covering various domains within identity and access management. we can conduct a health check or an assessment for you, and then provide very valuable insights that can that can be used for your next steps towards IAM journey, right? So depending on your outcomes that you expect, we can structure a little program to conduct a maturity and health check assessment for your IAM governance and IAM entire program. We will use Gathid to find insights. We also bring value from KPMG perspective. We can review your, for example, entire IAM governance framework, or we can even provide recommendations for updating IAM governance framework and policies. If you are embarking on identity management implementation, if you want to find out what are the authoritative sources, for example, what are the disparities between various sources that you may have, right? If you want to reconcile those things, we also can help you through this check program. So and then if you have a fully functioning program, obviously account management, access review, and certification is the core area where Gathid and KPMG can help. But in other areas like how is your self-service processes, if you have a mainstream IAM solution, and whether your existing IAM solution is scalable, for example, and how much connections you require for the existing legacy applications, I think we can do those kind of assessment with defined objectives and help you to come up with certain conclusions so that you can put forward for budget approvals, or you can as you go on your next steps in the IAM journey. So talk to KPMG. I'm based in Hong Kong right now, and I work for KPMG Hong Kong and China. Or talk to Alicia. We are very happy to help you in conducting a health check for your organization, covering various IAM governance domains. As I mentioned over here, there's 6 domains. And depending on your objectives, we are happy to help you. And we will structure a program for you to reap the benefits of not just from Gathid, but also from existing IAM solutions if you have. Alicia, Oli, anything to add?
No, perfect. Thanks, Bagia. Alicia?
Agree. Well said. I think the benefit of being able to do the 5-day health check is very insightful for personnel to be able to quickly unlock some value and utilize that to build their business case. So great to hear.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And one more thing, I think I want to emphasize this. I mean, economy is challenging for everybody, right? So if you want enhance your existing IAM solution, it's going to be very challenging for any organization to approve new budget. But the good thing with Gathid and KPMG approach is that if you were to do that, it's very cost effective. You don't need a lot of connections to be written and all these things. So it's not a massive investment as compared with the other complex IAM solutions implementation, but you can get the benefits, most of the benefit that is provided by such solutions with Gathid as well. So health check is actually a first steps to prove the value to you as well as your management about engaging Gathid, and then subsequently, hopefully, do bigger things together.
Thanks, Bagia. That's a really good point. We are seeing that a number of executives, CISOs or CIOs in large Forbes 2000 companies around the Asia region have had a change in their budget, right? And they had vision for multiple large projects, including identity transformation. And unfortunately, they just don't have the level of budget that they were planning on. However, they still need to get that visibility, put some kind of identity governance framework in place that is kind of all-encompassing to provide full visibility, and then show that they understand where the main problems are, and on a week-by-week, month-by-month basis, have the metrics, the evidence to show that things are getting better, right? So we are more than happy to help you with our free health check if you need to rescope these kind of projects to make sure that you still can deliver value to your team, and show that you understand where the issues are and that things are getting better. So we do have some questions. We've hit the just past the 45-minute mark. Lots of questions. So I will kind of review them and excuse me. I don't think we're going to be able to cover them all. So please rest assured we will ping you with a private response after the session. But I will start. And please, guys, if there's any other that you want to add, feel free. But the first question, I think it's more of a question for me. Excuse me. Who is typically the executive sponsor within the organization for this? So we're seeing it's typically the CISO or CIO. If you read reports from the large kind of research organizations, I think we all know the names. Identity is almost always top 3 issue for 2024 for cyber. So we are seeing that it's typically the CISO, CIO, excuse me, that is sponsoring these projects. We are seeing that because of the changed macroeconomic environment, their budgets are being reframed, right? They still need to understand where they're at, show that they're on a path to a better place, but just the amount of budget and how they can spend it has changed, right? So this is definitely happening in the market. However, the exec sponsor is still the same, typically CISO or CIO. Next question, I think maybe this may be more.
Do you mind if I add to that one a little, Ollie? If that's
Please.
okay. So what we find is, yeah, right, like to obtain the solution, it's typically starts there, but we've seen our implementations become more and more valuable the more business personnel that are, or like throughout the organization that are involved. They're finding that they may, other departments like HR or security or risk might already have projects. SAP, for example, they might already have projects that they have approved budget for. CISO is able to connect with them and find value through sharing the Gathid implementation, and all teams then benefit. So it does often lead, as you say, but then the sooner you have those additional business units involved, if they're running major transformation projects of their own, very quickly becomes beneficial throughout their organization, and their deployment goes really well very quickly.
Yeah, good point. Actually, we have a number of SAP projects that this is exactly what is happening. So we can explore that offline with anybody. Segregation of duties in SAP seems to be a common nightmare across many of our clients. So we're happy to help if we can. Cool. All right. So next question, I think it's more for Alicia. The question is, if I have more than, say, 50 systems, how would we work with that kind of an environment?
Oh, that's a great question. And we do have clients that have even more than the 50, but I think honestly, it comes down to what are your current goals. So if you have a target to, complete you have a troublesome system that you've never been able to connect into anything else, we would often bring, we'd identify those high priority systems first. But often our account management systems are an excellent place to start. We can very quickly, with just onboarding, Active Directory instances and Azure and Okta, for example, any account management solutions, being able to see that group membership right from day one is amazing. And then for the systems that also have local access, so you might be first targeting the groups, but then you can bring in, extracts from those systems locally to be able to see if anyone has access external to the group membership. Being able to compare that in Gathid is fantastic. But honestly, Gathid rebuilds every day. So it's how quickly can you get the data in? And then we just keep powering through. We have very specific data properties as a suggestion, but it's also very open. So we're just looking for, the username, the last login date, the level of access that they hold from these systems. It's not a lot of complex or personally identifiable information, which makes it super quick to bring those systems in and then schedule them to run each day to receive that fresh data. So if I had 50 systems to go through, I'd work with the client to identify what are your high priority items, what data do you have access to now, and then get going. And each day, adding more, having a very clear goal and that you're able to then achieve very quickly and see the achievements track each day, because every day you see a new system's been added, more accounts have been added. These are the outliers that we're taking control of. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks, Alicia. And I think the next question, maybe you have time for one or two more, maybe dovetails into what you just covered. The question is, if I have a major IAM and or PAM platform already deployed, such as the big names, we won't name them. How do I align with this technology? I think perhaps what you were saying in terms of the speed, the visibility, it's not really a competitive thing. It's more of a, I guess, extracting more value from those bigger platforms. Would you possibly expand a little bit on that? That would be useful. Thank you.
Definitely. And I'm seeing a lot of that actually at the moment. You know, they're getting ready to deploy a PAM solution, for example, and want to get their ducks in a row before they get going, clean house before they start the automation. So depending, no matter, it actually doesn't matter where you're up to, whether you haven't started, whether you're in progress, because Gathid will take a snapshot each day and show you back your reality, and then show you the differences between where you want to be and where you are. I think something that came out just this week actually in a project was there were a number of segregation of duty automations in place, and they were built in isolation from each other, and we were able to very quickly identify there were conflicts. So our client was able to consolidate all the SOD policies and the access, and then immediately see where there were non-compliant automations in place. So it really does benefit that existing implementation, and they were immediately able to tweak and resolve those non-compliances, and then ensure that automation now is working for them and with them. Does that cover that, Ollie? I hope I didn't get too...
Yeah, I think that's a good one. And just to add on to that, I'm seeing that if somebody has already embarked with a major transformation project with a specific vendor for IAM and PAM, they may, because it takes time to roll these things out, it's quite common to say, look, I've only got 50% covered. And I had a vision to add another 25% in 2024. The problem is I don't have the budget left to do that. So because of the macro changes, right? So I'm seeing that some projects are, look, I need to get some visibility across these 25%. I need to show improvement. So we are, and we are seeing that can also drive some discussions. So thank you, Alicia. Another good question here. Would Gathid be useful for supply chain and professional services organizations to limit the risk of their users being used as a vector to their customers in supply chain attacks? I will perhaps try to answer this initially and maybe defer to you guys, Bagya and Alicia, but I mean, we have very large clients that work a lot with contractors, for example, and other sort of third parties. And they, for example, may be entering those people as contractors into their AD, whereas their normal employees are maybe entered into a HR system. And these organizations might be very large mining companies, as example, where they have high turnover of staff. And it's very common for these organizations to have a big challenge in understanding, okay, who's still working here? What level of access do they have? Do they have too much access? Do they have dangerous combinations? Perhaps, Alicia, if you would maybe share a little bit more on that, would be very valuable.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no, absolutely. I think the ability to connect to related information and be able to find when there's deltas is really powerful in this particular use case. So if I were to, often our clients will start with that last accessed information, so where they can see whether the person had access from 3 years ago and they shouldn't anymore. External contractors, as you mentioned, Ollie, is a very quick win for all of our clients, because you can see they're not in HR, they are in AD, they have a particular attribute, because we can bring any of the attributes from Active Directory through, for example, be able to see which company they belong to. And we can even then connect that to, active companies working, or active third parties working within that organization, and check that they're still an active worker, if you will. So there's a lot that we can do with that particular use case. I'm going to reach out to the person that asked that question and hope we can sort of unpack a bit more about that question. It's a good one. Thank you.
Alicia, I think I want to chip in there. In particular on the vendor access and the party access to your organization's applications, systems, platforms, even perhaps APIs. Now, if you are especially in a regulated industry like banking or insurance industry, right? You are required, but based on the banking regulations, whether Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia, China, doesn't matter. You are required to monitor your third-party vendors, their access to your systems. How do they make use of your data? How do they protect your data? And all these things. And you are supposed to do continuous monitoring of third-party risks arising from third parties to your organization. So if you look at Gathid solution, that is what exactly Gathid doing. If you can pump the third-party access on a daily basis to Gathid, you're getting continuous visibility into their actions. And if you were to know that, okay, somebody was off-boarded, but how come he's still accessing the systems on the week later, right? Because you told your vendor to off-board somebody, but he or she has access to the systems again 1 week later, there's a problem somewhere, right? So that essentially, from IAM perspective, third-party access to your systems, applications, even perhaps APIs, I think you can continuously monitor that fulfills the regulatory requirement. That also, most importantly, that helps you to manage the risks arising from third parties. So this is a great solution if you are considering for that purpose.
And we would be happy to cover this off as the kind of focus of any kind of health check, if that's an area of interest for any particular clients. That's a really good question. So we have, I think, 3 minutes remaining. Perhaps we can just cover one final question. And guys, if there are any other questions from the audience, please enter them. We've got a big list here. We're going to come back in writing to each individual. So what is a good one here? Okay. I think this is a good one for Alicia. What is typically, how long does it typically take to see results from the Gathid system? Time to value. Considering today's macro environment, it's pretty interesting to cover this one, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great one too. Like, honestly, technically it's the same day. Like, we have the instance there, they drop the files, it runs, builds that graph, and we can see, as long as we know what we're looking for, we can see those results immediately. I think what I'm finding at the moment with a lot of our proof of concepts and with our new clients, they will have just completed an audit. Like, we're at that time of year again, we're getting ready to do our next, quarterly reviews. It's a brilliant time to use those CSVs as your starting point, and immediately see and prove that having a identity modeling solution there within your remit is very helpful. So we can, typically for those clients that have just done an audit, we'll use those CSV files and immediately show you things that you missed during that last audit, which will help you to build your business case to be able to show. With Gathid, we could see this every day. We wouldn't have to wait till the end of a quarter. We wouldn't have to wait on our business to complete spreadsheets. We'll instead, from day one, be able to see which accounts are connected to terminated people or aren't connected to employees, and or haven't logged in X number of days, and or track these reviews quicker. So it's a great question, but I can answer it in a million different ways. But yes, straight away is typically our within the first week. We're yet to have a client not see value. How's that? It's a pretty big call, but it's a reality.
Thank you. That's great, Alicia. I appreciate that. Last question for Bagia. It's a direct one. Can you tell us why KPMG chose Gathid as a tool for this 5-day health check? Might be a good way to summarize and wrap it all up. Thank you, Bagia.
Wow. I started explaining the reason, but okay, I can close it. Yes. So based on our experience, we know IAM solutions, whether irrespective of where you are in the IAM journey, there are issues in organizations. And then there are gaps, technical issues, there are process-related issues, there are cost-related matters that you cannot control all the time. So what we saw was that with Gathid, we can plug those holes very quickly and show the benefits to you. It is a very useful to continuously use it forever, but it also can be used as a short-term solution until your other existing mainstream IAM or the transformation kind of IAM solution are fully operational, right? So that's the reason. Based on my experience, there have been a number of issues I've seen over the years. Programs failed, under-delivered, and I think Gathid can help to address those concerns. That's the reason why we are working with Gathid.
Thank you so much, and we appreciate the partnership. And we're now a minute over the top of the hour, guys. So thank you everybody for attending. We hope you found it useful. You are welcome to reach out to us directly with any further questions, and we're happy to share more data or detail as required. So I think we're going to wrap up now. So thank you so much. Have a great weekend ahead, and we hope to see you soon. Look out, we do have a research team, so we produce research papers. We'll be sharing regularly. You can subscribe, and we will be having more webinars to discuss different topics in this space. So it'd be great to have you join us again. Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everyone.
Thank you very much.
Have a great weekend. Take care.
Thank you.